First story. My best friend claimed my boyfriend was her soulmate, took me into the woods to confess, and left me questioning our entire friendship. Samantha and I go way back, to the kind of friendship you'd expect from two people who practically grew up side by side. We met in middle school, and it didn't take long for us to become inseparable. A shared birthday was the first thing that cemented our bond, but over the years, it was so much more. My family became her family, especially since her home life was difficult. She was my sister in every way that mattered. We celebrated every birthday together, lived together for years, and even worked together for a while. If you saw one of us, the other wasn't far behind. That's why everything that happened has left me questioning how well I ever really knew her. It all started to change when we met Ryan. It was a casual night at the bowling alley, when he and his friends struck up a conversation with us. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged social media handles and started hanging out as a group. Ryan became a close friend to both of us, and we spent a lot of time together. A few months later, Samantha told me she and Ryan had gone on a couple of dates, but it didn't go anywhere. Ryan let her down gently, saying he didn't feel a romantic spark. Samantha acted like she was fine with it, but according to Ryan, she didn't take it as well as she pretended. After that, things were a little awkward, but they both moved on and started seeing other people. Time passed, and I didn't think much of it. Ryan and I got closer, especially after I ended a long and toxic relationship. One day, he asked me to see a movie, and the next thing I knew, we were dating. When I told Samantha, I thought she'd be happy for me, but her reaction was anything but supportive. She said she wished I had told her beforehand, so she could have convinced me not to go through with it. Her reasoning? She didn't want me to get hurt, but it felt deeper than that, like there was something she wasn't saying. For months, she tried to talk me out of dating Ryan, but I held my ground. Eventually, she seemed to let it go, and I went out of my way to manage the awkwardness. I made sure Ryan and Samantha rarely crossed paths, but every now and then, something strange would happen. One day, Ryan was leaving my house just as Samantha pulled into the driveway. I didn't think much of it until Samantha came inside, acting unusually edgy. She claimed Ryan looked antsy and suggested I track his location just to make sure he wasn't cheating. It seemed over the top, but I brushed it off as her being overprotective. Things took a darker turn during our birthday this year. For years, we made it a tradition to celebrate together, and this time was no different, at least at first. We planned 2 parties, one with my family and one with hers. The problem arose when Ryan's younger brother had a band concert on the same day as her family's party. I told Samantha I wanted to attend the concert and would come to her party afterward, but she flipped out. The argument that followed dragged on for days. I eventually caved and skipped the concert, but the tension between us lingered. At her family's party, Samantha seemed distant, even cold. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, she suggested we take a walk through the field near her house. Something about the way she said it felt off, but I went along with it, hoping to smooth things over. She led me into the woods, down a barely visible path, until we reached a clearing under the night sky. It was eerily quiet and I started feeling uneasy. Then she stopped abruptly and turned to face me. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I brought you here because there's something you need to know," she began, her voice steady but unnervingly calm. "Ryan Carter is my soulmate. You two aren't meant to be together. Even if he's not mine now, he will be. The universe will make sure of it." I stared at her, completely stunned. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just heard. Finally, I managed to say, "You're crazy," and turned to leave. I didn't look back. I just kept walking as fast as I could until I reached the house. I found our friend Lauren and begged her to take me home. In the car, I explained what had happened, and Lauren's face went pale. That's when she told me Samantha had been acting strange for months, dabbling in spirituality and talking about higher beings. Lauren mentioned seeing a shrine in Samantha's closet, complete with candles and trinkets, and hearing about a pendulum Samantha used to communicate with the universe. Apparently, Samantha had asked the pendulum if she had a soulmate, and it said yes. Then she asked if her soulmate was Ryan, and the answer was the same. Hearing this only made everything worse. I called Ryan as soon as I got home and told him everything. He was just as shocked as I was, though he admitted he'd suspected she wasn't over him. Still, he never imagined it was this extreme. I've cut contact with Samantha since that night, but it's left me shaken. This was someone I considered family, someone I trusted with everything. Now I'm left wondering how much of our friendship was real, and how much of it was built on something I never saw coming. About a month ago, I shared the surreal and heartbreaking moment when my best friend Samantha led me into the woods and confessed that she was in love with my boyfriend Ryan. She didn't just stop there. She claimed Ryan was her soulmate, as if the universe had written their love story. That night, I left feeling betrayed, confused, and shattered. Little did I know, the fallout from that confession would be just as strange and emotionally draining. That night, Lauren, my other close friend, stayed with me to make sure I was okay. The next morning, Ryan and I joined Lauren at her house to talk everything over with the rest of our friend group. It was important to me that they heard the full story, especially since Samantha's actions had blindsided me. As I recounted the events, I could see the shock and disbelief on their faces. One of our friends, Nikki, spoke up after I finished. She admitted she'd noticed Samantha acting oddly around Ryan for months. Little things started to make sense, like how Samantha would sit closer to Ryan than necessary, or how she'd film him doing mundane things like tying his shoes or making a cup of coffee. At the time, Nikki hadn't thought much of it, but now it all seemed like glaring red flags. After a lengthy discussion, everyone agreed that Samantha's fixation on Ryan was deeply concerning. Lauren, in particular, was adamant that Samantha's behavior posed a potential danger to me, both emotionally and possibly even physically. The group's support was comforting, but also solidified my decision to distance myself from Samantha, for my own sake and for Ryan's. For the next 3 days, I avoided all contact with Samantha. It was hard. She'd been one of my closest friends for years, and the silence felt like a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach. But then I remembered that Samantha had left her guitar at my house months ago. I didn't feel right holding on to it any longer, especially since I had no plans to reconcile with her anytime soon. Coincidentally, it was also our birthday week, something we'd always celebrated together, and my sisters had given me a gift to pass along to Samantha. A tiger ring. Despite everything, I wanted to show her a small gesture of kindness, hoping it might soften the tension between us. I sent her a message. "I need to bring you your guitar. My sisters also gave me a birthday gift to give to you. Let me know when would be a good time." Samantha responded quickly, suggesting I come by that evening. Nervous about how the interaction might go, I asked Lauren to come with me for support. When we arrived, Samantha greeted us calmly, though there was an air of awkwardness. I handed her the guitar and the ring, trying to keep things light. As we talked, I told her that despite everything, she was still important to me. I mentioned how concerned I was about how much she had changed in recent months. To my surprise, she admitted that she'd been acting differently and even apologized for the strain it had put on our friendship. She slipped the ring on, and it fit her perfectly, almost too perfectly. We all laughed about it, and I snapped a photo of her wearing it to send to my sisters. But as Samantha went to take the ring off, it snapped in half. The three of us froze for a moment. I quickly apologized, feeling embarrassed, but Samantha just laughed it off. She said she didn't mean to break it and seemed unbothered, but the moment left me feeling uneasy. It felt symbolic, like the universe was driving home a point I didn't want to accept. Later that night, I texted Samantha one last heartfelt message. I told her I would always care about her, and that no matter what, she'd always mean more to me than any guy ever would. Her response was warm, and for a brief moment I thought maybe we could work through everything. But things took another turn soon after. Samantha and I had made plans weeks earlier to visit a mutual friend who had recently moved out of town. When I asked if she was still planning to go, she abruptly canceled, saying she needed to focus on schoolwork. It was frustrating because she'd been so enthusiastic about the trip just a week earlier. When I pressed her about why she had insisted on going in the first place, her tone shifted drastically. She sent me a long, angry text starting with, "Oh my God." She accused me of being insensitive and claimed that her priorities, her spiritual path, as she put it, were more important than plans with friends. I tried to stay calm and explained that I just wanted clarity. I told her I barely recognized her anymore, and that she wasn't the same Samantha I'd known for years. Her response chilled me. She admitted that she wasn't the same person, saying that her spiritual journey had revealed harsh truths about her relationships. She claimed her higher beings had shown her that I was a fake friend who had been holding her back. Reading those words felt like a dagger to the heart. Samantha and I had shared so much over the years, and now she was rewriting our history to fit this new narrative. The conversation ended with Samantha declaring that we were no longer good for each other. She said I was a weight she needed to shed to focus on her true path. I didn't argue. I simply stopped replying. Since then, Samantha has distanced herself from everyone in our friend group. She still texts Lauren occasionally, but she hasn't hung out with any of us. It's clear that the Samantha I once knew and loved is gone. It hurts to let go of someone you once considered family. But I've come to accept that not all friendships are meant to last forever. Sometimes people change in ways you can't understand, and all you can do is wish them well from a distance. Second story. AITA for banning my daughter's vegan boyfriend from Thanksgiving after he ruined family meals with his criticism and moral lectures. Thanksgiving is supposed to be a time for family, food, and creating memories, right? But for me, this year's Thanksgiving is turning into something else entirely. It all started with my daughter Emma's boyfriend, Alex. He's been in the picture for about a year now, and while on the surface he seems like a nice guy, I just can't shake the feeling that something's off. I've met Alex a few times. He's polite, sure, but there's always something about him that feels abrasive. And I can't quite put my finger on it. He's a vegan. Nothing wrong with that, plenty of people are. But Alex is one of those vegans who feels the need to turn every meal into a moral debate. At almost every family gathering, he's been quick to make comments about what we're eating, questioning why we consume meat, or why we buy non-organic produce. At first, I figured it was just youthful enthusiasm, but after a while, it started to feel more like judgment. There was one dinner that really stuck with me. I went out of my way to make something that would accommodate Alex's dietary preferences. I prepared a pasta dish with a fresh salad on the side, thinking this would make everyone happy. But no, Alex wasn't content with that. He immediately pointed out that the Parmesan I used wasn't real Parmesan, because of course, authentic Parmesan isn't vegan. So that didn't pass his test. When I offered him dessert, my homemade apple pie, freshly baked from scratch, he refused. Not because he didn't like apple pie, but because it had sugar in it. He then launched into this long, drawn-out lecture about how sugar is toxic and how processed foods are ruining society. The whole table fell silent, and everyone looked visibly uncomfortable. I had to step in and steer the conversation away from that rabbit hole, just to keep things from spiraling. It wasn't just about food at that point. It was about the atmosphere he was creating. Now, Thanksgiving is a big deal in our family. We host it every year, and I spend weeks planning the menu. We have the whole traditional spread: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, green bean casserole, pumpkin pie. It's a big celebration. I love putting it together. It's a time to gather with our loved ones, relax, and enjoy the food we've all come to know and love. This year, we were expecting about 15 people, including my parents, my sister's family, and some close friends. Everyone looks forward to it. Everyone except Alex, apparently. A couple of weeks ago, Emma brought up the idea of inviting Alex to Thanksgiving. I hesitated, the memory of his previous comments still fresh in my mind. I told her I wasn't sure it was the best idea. She promised that Alex would be on his best behavior and wouldn't make any comments about the food. But deep down, I wasn't convinced. I know Emma loves him, but I don't think she truly realizes how uncomfortable his attitude makes the rest of us feel. I thought about it for a few days, trying to figure out the right thing to do. In the end, I decided to tell Emma that Alex couldn't come. I explained that Thanksgiving is already stressful enough without worrying about Alex potentially criticizing the meal or making anyone feel judged. I want this day to be about family, tradition, and enjoyment, not about navigating awkward food debates or being made to feel bad about our choices. Emma didn't take it well. She got furious, accused me of being unfair and disrespectful. She argued that Alex is an important part of her life, and that I was making assumptions about him without giving him a chance. She said I was treating him like an outsider, and that it wasn't fair to not give him the opportunity to prove he could behave. I tried to explain that it wasn't personal, that it was about wanting a peaceful day without unnecessary tension. But Emma wasn't having it. She said I was being rigid and controlling. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, she threatened not to come at all if Alex wasn't welcome. To complicate things further, Liam, my 19-year-old son, thinks I'm overreacting. He believes I should just let Alex come, that it's not a big deal. And my husband? Well, he's stuck in the middle. He understands why I'm frustrated with Alex, but he thinks I might be too harsh in banning him from the dinner altogether. So now, I'm left second-guessing myself. It's not that I dislike Alex as a person, I really don't. He's not a bad guy, but his behavior puts me in such an awkward position. I don't want to ruin Thanksgiving, but I also don't want to prioritize Alex's feelings over the comfort of the rest of the family. Emma thinks I'm being unreasonable, Liam thinks I'm being too strict, and my husband just wants everyone to get along. I'm genuinely torn here. Should I have allowed Alex to come despite my concerns? Or am I right in setting boundaries in my own home? I don't want to cause a rift in my family, but I also don't want to be steamrolled into accepting behavior that I find uncomfortable. AITA for saying no to Alex at Thanksgiving. Third story. My brother kicked me out of his wedding after I altered the bridesmaid dress to feel comfortable. Did I make the right choice? My brother Ethan, who's 55, is getting married to Laura, who's 27. To be honest, when I first heard the news, I was a little taken aback by the age difference. But hey, they seem happy together. I've met Laura only a handful of times because she lives in another state, but a few months ago, she asked my sister Carol and me to be bridesmaids. I was honestly surprised and touched. It felt like a gesture of inclusion, especially considering how little I really know her. Along with Carol and me, there were 4 other bridesmaids, all much younger, and it felt like I was stepping into a new world. But then came the dress. Laura sent me the link to the bridesmaid dress, and I almost fell over when I saw it. Now, let me be clear, I'm not a prude. I'm 60, but I'm in good shape, and I love getting dressed up for occasions. But this dress? It was a no-go for me. The neckline plunged so low I could hardly believe it was considered appropriate for a formal event. The slit went up so high that I felt like one strong gust of wind could give the guests a little too much of a view. And don't even get me started on the fabric. It was so clingy that every lump, bump, and curve was highlighted in a way I wasn't comfortable with. I mean, come on. I'm 60 years old, not 20. I know the other bridesmaids are younger, but I didn't want to be standing in front of my entire family, including relatives I barely know, looking like I was trying to relive my youth. It wasn't about modesty. It was about feeling comfortable and confident in what I was wearing. I called Laura, and I tried to explain myself. I asked if there was any chance she had a more modest version of the dress available. I was polite, trying to keep the peace, because I didn't want to cause any drama on her special day. But she was firm. "This is the dress I want for all of my bridesmaids," she insisted. There was no room for compromise. Carol, my sister, wasn't thrilled with the dress either, but she's a marathon runner, and let's be real, she could pull it off. I, on the other hand, wasn't ready to embrace being the oldest bridesmaid in a dress that felt more like a costume than formal wear. So, I made the decision to do something that I thought would solve the problem. I ordered the dress, but I got it several sizes too big. I then took it to a seamstress, asking her to alter it so it wouldn't cling to me in all the wrong places. She was wonderful. She lowered the slit so it hit just above my knee, and she adjusted the neckline so I wouldn't feel like I was about to spill out of it. The dress still looked elegant, just more comfortable. But when Laura found out, everything blew up. She was furious. She texted me, saying she didn't want a chopped-up dress in her wedding photos. She didn't want me to show up in something that wasn't exactly as I sent it. I sent her pictures of the alterations, trying to show her it was still beautiful, but she wasn't having it. Then, Ethan called. He told me that I had been disinvited from the wedding party. Apparently, they had replaced me with someone else. At first, I was stunned. I thought they didn't want me at the wedding at all anymore. So, I canceled my hotel reservation. I hadn't bought my plane ticket yet, but I figured, why spend any more money on this event where I wasn't wanted? It seemed to me that it would be easier for everyone if I just quietly bowed out. My sister Carol was still a bridesmaid, and I knew it would just be awkward if I showed up and people started asking questions about why she was still in the wedding and I wasn't. The easiest answer seemed to be for them to say, "Oh, she couldn't make it," and leave it at that. I still wanted to support Ethan and Laura, though. I sent them a generous wedding gift, letting Ethan know that I was happy for them and wished them all the best. But instead of understanding, Ethan went radio silent, and Laura has been telling Carol that I ruined her wedding. That's the last thing I ever intended to do. So now I'm left wondering, am I the bad guy here? Was it wrong to alter the dress so I didn't feel uncomfortable in it? And once everything exploded, was I wrong for deciding not to attend the wedding? I never wanted to cause drama, but now I'm wondering if I made the right choice.